Hi, I'm Wesley Ferreira, clarinet professor at Colorado State University. And today I'm going to discuss how to prepare this year's Colorado All-State Band Audition. In this video, Rose Etude number 26 will be our focus. Upon first glance, you'll notice that it is quite technical, and the Allegro Furioso marking suggests that this etude should be performed quickly and with great energy. As with all of your clarinet playing, using good practice techniques will be the key to learning this etude properly and doing your best come audition day. Let's go over some important and basic concepts to keep in mind when preparing this etude. Slow and deliberate practice. Practicing slowly will allow you to learn all of the notes correctly and evenly from the get-go. I'm sure you've all been in situations where you've learned a passage of music too quickly, with incorrect notes. You know that it's much more difficult to go back and correct these notes once the passage is under your fingers. Practice this etude with a metronome set at a slow eighth note subdivision, so that right away you are learning the notes and rhythms evenly. Needless to say, playing the correct notes and rhythms is the basic ingredient for audition success. As you begin to progress, increase the tempo on the metronome in small increments to help guide you to your ultimate tempo. Now, when I say deliberate practice, I mean that it is important to learn the music with the correct articulations, fingerings, and a sense of musical style. As you are practicing slowly, learning the notes and rhythms, make sure that you are not losing sight of the other important aspects of this etude. Paying attention to these details will often make the difference between higher and lower seating placement within the clarinet section. Now, this may sound like a lot to do at once, but this is why we start slowly. By practicing this way, you'll begin to notice that as you bump up the tempo on your metronome, you are beginning to allow muscle memory to take over. The music is becoming ingrained in you. Of course, this takes good planning. Proper planning develops consistency. This means that by the time you perform your audition, you will have the confidence in knowing that you have already played the etude many times, the exact same way. This fact usually helps calm your nerves, and if nerves do become a factor, you can be confident that your deliberate practice and planning will allow you to do your best in that moment. Okay, what to plan? Breathing. It's important to plan your breathing spots. I've listed all of the obvious places where you will want to breathe with a red star. In measure 9, some of you might have to take a quick catch breath after the low E natural. In measure 18, some of you might have to take a quick catch breath after the low G. I will demonstrate all possible breathing options in my performance to come. It's also important in this etude to decide on which fingerings to use. Let's go measure by measure. On the downbeat of the second measure, use the left hand C natural and right hand B natural. I've marked these on my part with an L and an R as a reminder. You will also want to use the left hand C natural in measure 3, measure 10, measure 15, 19, and measure 20. As clarinetists, we always want to avoid flipping and sliding between keys, and the passage in measures 4 and 5 is a good example of where planning will eliminate these awkward fingerings. In measure 4, it's necessary to use the side E-flat key on those notes before the C natural. And to avoid the blip of an added or extra note that we sometimes hear when flipping between notes on the clarinet, I would suggest using the side F sharp in measure 4 and the fork fingering for B natural in measure 5. I'll demonstrate slowly. Now let's talk about some pitfalls to avoid when performing this etude. We always want to guard against rushing, so make sure to keep a steady tempo in measures 3, 7, 13, and 15. You want to avoid the tendency to rush these descending broken arpeggio chords. Emphasize the first two notes. Make sure that you can hear them clearly. This will help to avoid rushing. And also remember that when practicing, the metronome is your friend. I often tell my students that you will always sound like an 80% better clarinetist if you can play with a full tone, backed by a lot of air support. This is especially true in pieces of music that require a lot of finger technique, like Rose's Etude number 26. Again, in order to achieve success in this regard, practice with full tone and a lot of air support right away when first learning the piece. Remember, it's during the initial slow practice phase when you want to create consistent habits in your playing. Start by playing the Etude all slurred so that you can more easily hear the connection between the notes. I might even begin to learn the Etude this way, slurring all of the notes and playing with good tone and air support. The entire Etude is marked with a forte dynamic, so please, exhale with fast-moving air. Next, we add the articulations to this passage. It's important to have a lot of energy in measures 2 and 3 on the repeated notes. The first note should act like a springboard to the next. While keeping in mind the continuous air support that I first performed with, I'll now add in the articulations as written. There are a few other spots in this Etude that require consideration. Measures 9 and 10 might be the most difficult of the entire Etude. The quick leaps from the chalumeau register to the high clarion register should be worked on slowly, with something that I call finger first. I'll demonstrate. First, practice articulating the bottom note. You'll notice that in order to make this note sound, you need to remove your tongue from the reed and then place it back on. Next, while your tongue is on the reed after having played this bottom note, quickly play the fingering for the top note. Once you have the fingering for the top note in place, you remove your tongue from the reed to make this top note actually sound. What we are doing here is using the finger-first technique to train your fingers to move quickly and automatically between these two notes. The automatic finger-first connection is the most important aspect to practice in this passage. Putting this all into context now, I would recommend practicing measures 9 and 10 the following way. First, practicing slowly, pause after the finger-first connection, then continue. I will leave a large gap in sound between these two notes, and then gradually I'll narrow the gap. Measures 16 to 18 also offer challenges in this Etude. Bring out the descending notes in these measures. Play them alone so you can get them in your ear. You want to highlight these notes when playing the passage as written. I also want to point out that as you're learning this passage, practicing slowly, pay attention to whether you are playing with any tension in your fingers or anywhere in your body for that matter. You will play with your best tone and best technical capability when playing with relaxation. As you bump up the tempo on your metronome, maintain relaxation. If you start to feel tense, you may not be ready to move to a faster tempo. As I pointed out earlier, practice this etude the same way at every tempo. This means being relaxed at every tempo. It will build consistency that will reward you during performance. Finally, let's talk about how to play that grace note before measure 17. Place it before the downbeat, the open G. In order to do this, we need to take a little time away from the preceding C natural. It's almost as if you want to think about rushing the C natural to get to the low G grace note. Practice measure 16 slowly. Become comfortable playing the grace note and landing on the downbeat of measure 17 in tempo. Begin to increase the tempo, and as well, start adding notes in measure 17, so that your practice becomes less about isolating and more about playing this figure in context. Before I demonstrate the portion of the etude required for the All-State Band audition this year, a word about tempo. This etude can be played fast, but it's not necessary to perform it at a lightning speed. You can achieve the furioso character with a tempo as low as quarter equals 100. Playing at 100 or at say 108 with good tone, correct notes, clean articulation, and a good sense of musicality is always better than playing faster but sloppy. Now, I'm going to perform this etude sitting to maximize stability and relaxation and to minimize any movement in other parts of my body. I only want my fingers to move. It's been a pleasure sharing my thoughts on this etude. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me anytime. I hope to see all of you at the All-State Band Weekend this year, and even at the various honor bands in our state, many that use this same etude. Good luck with your auditions.